When a woman cannot stop thinking about a man, one of the first things that changes is the energy she brings into the connection. This change is often subtle. She may not consciously decide to behave differently, yet her attention, emotions, and focus begin influencing the way she interacts with him. Human beings naturally communicate through far more than words. Tone of voice, body language, timing, attentiveness, and emotional presence all send signals. And a woman who is constantly thinking about a man usually starts sending different signals without even realizing it. She may become more attentive during conversations. She notices details she might have overlooked before. She remembers things he said days or weeks earlier. She becomes more interested in his opinions, experiences, and daily life. These behaviors are not necessarily planned. They are often the natural result of emotional investment. When someone occupies our thoughts frequently, we tend to pay closer attention to them when they are present. The psychology behind this is simple. Attention is one of the clearest indicators of interest. People naturally direct their mental energy toward what matters to them emotionally. As a woman's thoughts become increasingly focused on a man, that focus often shows up in her actions. She may respond more thoughtfully, initiate conversations more often, or seem genuinely curious about what is happening in his life. Even small changes in engagement can create a noticeable difference in the dynamic between two people. Interestingly, a man may not always be able to identify exactly what has changed. He may simply sense that her energy toward him feels different. Humans are surprisingly sensitive to emotional cues. We often pick up on interest, warmth, enthusiasm, and attention even when they are not explicitly stated. A woman who is emotionally invested tends to create interactions that feel more engaged and meaningful, and those interactions often stand out. Another reason this shift matters is that emotional investment changes the quality of attention. Casual interest tends to be selective and inconsistent. Deeper interest tends to be more focused and sustained. A woman who is frequently thinking about a man may begin prioritizing interactions with him, making more time for communication, or showing greater enthusiasm when opportunities to connect arise. These behaviors naturally influence how he experiences the relationship. This does not mean that thinking about someone automatically creates attraction. The effect depends on how that attention is expressed. When the attention feels warm, genuine, and balanced, it often creates a positive emotional atmosphere. The man feels valued, noticed, and appreciated. However, if the thoughts become obsessive and lead to overpursuit, constant monitoring, or excessive need for reassurance, the dynamic can become more complicated. Emotional balance remains important. The most powerful version of this energy is not desperation, it is presence. It is the ability to be genuinely engaged when you are with someone while still maintaining your own life, confidence, and sense of self. A woman who thinks about a man but remains grounded often creates a feeling of comfort and authenticity that can strengthen emotional connection naturally. Many women underestimate how much their attention influences relationships. They focus on finding the perfect words or making grand gestures, but often the strongest signal is consistent emotional presence. Remembering details, showing genuine curiosity, listening carefully, and being emotionally engaged communicate interest in a way that feels real and meaningful. What makes this especially important is that people tend to remember those who make them feel seen. A man may forget many casual conversations, but he is more likely to remember interactions where he felt genuinely understood, appreciated, and valued. A woman's focused attention can create exactly that feeling, because it communicates that he matters to her in a deeper way. And when a woman cannot stop thinking about a man, the first thing he often notices is not a dramatic declaration, it is the quiet but unmistakable change in the energy she brings into his life. When a woman cannot stop thinking about a man, something interesting begins to happen. Her feelings start showing up less through what she says and more through what she does. While words are important, actions often reveal emotions more honestly than conversations ever can. A woman who is emotionally invested may not always openly express the depth of her feelings, but her behavior frequently tells the story. This is why one of the most noticeable changes is that she begins communicating through actions more than words. The psychology behind this is simple. When someone occupies a significant amount of your thoughts, your attention naturally follows them. You become more aware of their needs, their preferences, their moods, and the small details that make them unique. Over time, this awareness starts influencing behavior. The woman may not consciously decide to act differently, but her feelings create subtle changes that become visible through her action. She may start remembering little things he mentions in passing. Perhaps he talks about an important meeting, a family event, or a goal he is working toward. Weeks later, she remembers and asks about it. To her, this may feel completely natural because she genuinely cares. To him, however, it often stands out. Remembering details signals attention, and attention is one of the strongest indicators of emotional investment. Another way this appears is through consistency. When a woman is frequently thinking about a man, she often becomes more reliable in the connection. She checks in. She follows through on things she says she will do. She remains engaged even when life becomes busy. Consistency creates trust because it shows that her interest is not based on convenience or temporary emotion. It demonstrates that the connection occupies a meaningful place in her mind. Her curiosity may also become more noticeable. Instead of staying on surface-level topics, she begins asking questions that help her understand him more deeply. She becomes interested in his goals, his challenges, his values, and his experiences. This kind of curiosity is powerful because it makes a person feel important. Most people enjoy being around those who genuinely care about understanding who they are. Warmth is another form of action-based communication. A woman who is emotionally invested often becomes more encouraging, more supportive, and more attentive. She celebrates his successes. She notices when he seems stressed. She offers support when he faces difficulties. These actions may seem small individually, but together they create an emotional environment that feels comforting and positive. What makes actions so powerful is that they feel authentic. Words can be spoken quickly and sometimes without much thought. Actions require effort. They require attention. They require a person to consistently invest time and energy into the connection. Because of this, people often trust actions more than verbal expressions. A man may not always be able to explain why he feels increasingly connected to a woman, but he often responds to the emotional experience she creates. When her actions consistently communicate care, reliability, and genuine interest, those experiences leave an impression. He begins associating her with positive emotions because she contributes something valuable to his daily life. It is important to understand that these actions are most effective when they come from a place of balance rather than overgiving. There is a difference between showing care and sacrificing your entire identity for someone else's attention. The healthiest emotional connections occur when a woman remains true to herself while naturally expressing her feelings through thoughtful behavior. This balance is what makes her actions meaningful. She is not acting out of desperation or trying to force a relationship forward. She is simply allowing her genuine interest to show through consistent, authentic behavior. As a result, the connection feels natural rather than pressured. Over time, these actions often speak louder than any romantic declaration ever could. They communicate reliability, affection, and emotional presence in a way that words alone cannot achieve. Because when a woman genuinely cares about a man, her feelings often become visible not through what she says, but through the countless small actions that quietly show he matters to her. When a woman cannot stop thinking about a man, one of the most interesting things that often happens is that he begins noticing her presence more and more. This does not occur because of some mysterious force or hidden psychological trick. It happens because consistent attention, positive interactions, and emotional investment naturally make a person stand out in someone else's life. Over time, what may have started as casual awareness can slowly grow into something much more significant. Human beings are influenced by repetition and emotional experience. The people who leave the strongest impressions are not always the loudest, the most dramatic, or even the most physically attractive. Very often, they are the people who consistently create positive emotions. They are the people who bring warmth into conversations, who listen with genuine interest, who make others feel understood, and who contribute something meaningful to everyday interactions. When a woman is frequently thinking about a man, she often becomes more emotionally engaged, and that engagement can make her presence increasingly noticeable. The psychology behind this is simple. The human brain naturally pays attention to people who become emotionally relevant. Emotional relevance is created when interactions carry meaning. A woman who remembers details, shows genuine curiosity, offers support, and consistently contributes positive energy creates experiences that stand out. As these experiences accumulate, the man begins associating her with feelings of comfort, appreciation, and connection. Many women assume that attraction is created through dramatic moments, but lasting emotional attachment is often built through repeated positive interactions. A thoughtful message, a meaningful conversation, a moment of encouragement, or a shared laugh may seem small individually, yet together they create a pattern. The more positive experiences someone associates with another person, the more that person naturally occupies space in their thoughts. This is why presence becomes so important. Presence is not simply being physically available. It is being emotionally engaged. It is the ability to make interactions feel meaningful. When a woman consistently brings this kind of presence into a man's life, he often begins looking forward to conversations with her. He notices when she is around, and he notices when she is not. Her absence becomes more visible because her presence has become valuable. Another reason this happens is that emotional consistency creates familiarity. Familiarity, when combined with positive feelings, often increases comfort and trust. The man starts seeing her not as someone who occasionally appears in his life, but as someone who has become part of his emotional landscape. Her opinions matter more. Her messages feel more important. Her presence carries greater significance because she has become connected to positive experiences. It is also worth understanding that people tend to remember those who make them feel good about themselves. A woman who listens without judgment, encourages growth, celebrates successes, and genuinely values a man's thoughts creates an environment where he feels appreciated. These feelings are powerful because they satisfy deep emotional needs. As a result, he becomes more aware of her role in creating those experiences. However, this process works best when it develops naturally. A woman cannot force someone to think about her by demanding attention or constantly inserting herself into every aspect of his life. In fact, excessive pursuit often has the opposite effect. The strongest impressions are usually created when attention is balanced with confidence and authenticity. She remains engaged, but she also maintains her own life, goals, and identity. This balance is what makes her presence memorable. She is not trying to convince him to notice her. She is simply bringing value, warmth, and sincerity into the interactions they share. Over time, those qualities become difficult to ignore. The connection grows because it feels good, not because it feels forced. Perhaps the most fascinating part is that the man may not immediately realize why she occupies more space in his thoughts. He simply notices that conversations with her feel different. He notices that he enjoys hearing from her. He notices that her opinions matter and that her absence feels more noticeable than before. These are often the early signs that emotional significance is growing. Because when a woman consistently brings positivity, attention, and genuine presence into a man's life, she often becomes someone he notices not just when she is there, but also when she is not. When a woman cannot stop thinking about a man, her emotional focus becomes a powerful force in the relationship. But whether that force strengthens attraction or weakens, it depends largely on how it is expressed. This is one of the most important truths that many people overlook. Thinking about someone is natural. Caring deeply about someone is natural. Wanting to feel connected to someone is natural. The challenge begins when those thoughts move from healthy affection into constant anxiety, over-pursuit, or emotional pressure. At first, the difference may seem small. A woman who likes a man may think about him throughout the day. She may wonder how he is doing, look forward to hearing from him, or feel excited when they talk. These feelings are normal and often create positive energy in a relationship. The problem arises when her thoughts become dominated by fear instead of affection. Instead of enjoying the connection, she begins worrying about every message, every delay, every change in tone, and every interaction. The psychology behind this is important to understand. Human beings are naturally drawn toward emotional environments that feel safe and comfortable. Attraction tends to grow when interactions create positive emotions such as curiosity, appreciation, excitement, and trust. On the other hand, attraction often weakens when interactions become filled with pressure, tension, and constant emotional demands. When a woman's thoughts become obsessive, those thoughts often influence her behavior. She may start overanalyzing everything he says. She may repeatedly seek reassurance. She may feel the need to constantly check in, monitor the relationship, or look for proof that his feelings have not changed. Even if her intentions are good, These behaviors can create an emotional atmosphere that feels heavy rather than enjoyable. A man may initially respond with patience and understanding. However, if every conversation begins revolving around uncertainty, reassurance, or fear, the dynamic can slowly shift. Instead of feeling excited about the connection, he may start feeling responsible for managing someone else's emotional state. What began as affection can start feeling like pressure. This is why emotional balance is so powerful. A woman who genuinely likes a man but remains emotionally grounded creates a very different experience. She enjoys the connection without making it the center of her entire world. She values the relationship while also maintaining her own goals, interests, friendships, and sense of identity. Her happiness is enhanced by the relationship, but it is not completely dependent on it. Confidence plays a major role here. Confident people trust themselves. They understand that uncertainty is a normal part of relationships. They do not need constant reassurance to feel secure because their sense of worth does not depend entirely on another person's actions. This emotional stability often feels attractive because it creates freedom. The relationship has room to breathe, grow, and develop naturally. Another reason emotional balance matters is that it allows genuine attraction to emerge. When someone feels pressured, they often focus on escaping the pressure. When someone feels comfortable, they are free to focus on the connection itself. This is why balanced affection often creates stronger emotional bonds than intense pursuit. It is also important to remember that attraction is not strengthened by trying to control outcomes. No amount of worrying, monitoring, or overthinking can force another person to develop feelings. In many cases, these behaviors simply create unnecessary stress. What strengthens relationships is authenticity. It is showing genuine care while allowing the connection to develop at its own pace. The women who leave the strongest impressions are often not the ones who think about a man every second of the day. They are the ones who combine affection with self-respect. They can care deeply without losing themselves. They can appreciate the relationship without becoming consumed by it. This balance creates an emotional atmosphere that feels calm, attractive, and inviting. Perhaps the greatest irony of all is that when a woman stops trying to force a connection and starts trusting the process, she often becomes even more attractive. Her energy shifts from fear to confidence, from pressure to presence, from anxiety to authenticity, because in the end, it is not how often a woman thinks about a man that matters most. It is whether those thoughts create connection or create pressure. When a woman cannot stop thinking about a man, one of the most fascinating things that can happen is that she begins influencing his thoughts without even realizing it. This does not happen through manipulation, mind games, or secret techniques. It happens through something much simpler and far more powerful: the emotional experiences she creates. Human beings naturally remember people who make them feel something meaningful, and when a woman consistently brings positive energy, understanding, support, and authenticity into a man's life, she often leaves a lasting impression that stays with him long after the interaction ends. The psychology behind this is straightforward. The human brain is constantly processing experiences and assigning emotional value to them. We tend to think more about people who are connected to positive emotions. If a conversation leaves us feeling encouraged, appreciated, understood, or inspired, that experience often lingers in our minds. Over time, the person associated with those feelings begins occupying more mental space because our minds naturally return to experiences that felt rewarding. This is why attraction is rarely just about appearance or chemistry. While those things may spark initial interest, emotional experiences are often what determine who remains memorable. A woman who consistently brings warmth into a man's life creates emotional associations that are difficult to ignore. He may find himself recalling conversations they shared, remembering things she said, or smiling when something reminds him of her. These moments are often signs that her presence has become emotionally significant. One way this influence develops is through genuine support. Everyone faces challenges, frustrations, and moments of uncertainty. When a woman consistently offers encouragement, understanding, and perspective during those moments, she becomes associated with comfort and reassurance. The man begins viewing her as someone whose presence improves his emotional state. Naturally, he starts thinking about her more often because the emotional experience she provides has value. Another important factor is authenticity. People are constantly surrounded by surface-level interactions. Many conversations are polite but forgettable. Authenticity stands out because it creates a deeper connection. A woman who is honest, sincere, and genuinely interested in understanding a man often creates conversations that feel meaningful. Meaningful conversations tend to stay in a person's mind far longer than ordinary ones. Their experiences also play a major role. Whether it is a deep conversation, a funny moment, a thoughtful gesture, or a memorable experience, these moments create emotional markers. The more positive emotional markers associated with a woman, the more likely she is to remain present in a man's thoughts. He may hear a song, visit a place, or experience something that reminds him of her because the connection has become linked to meaningful memories. What many women fail to realize is that influence is often strongest when it is effortless. A woman who constantly tries to force herself into a man's thoughts may actually create resistance. But a woman who simply shows up as her authentic self, contributes positivity, and creates meaningful interactions often leaves a much stronger impression. Her influence develops naturally because it is based on genuine connection rather than pressure. Confidence also plays a role. A confident woman tends to leave lasting impressions because she creates emotional experiences without seeking constant validation. She is comfortable being herself. She does not need to chase attention because her presence alone carries value. This confidence often makes interactions feel refreshing and memorable. Over time, these positive emotional experiences accumulate. The man begins associating her with feelings he enjoys. He thinks about conversations they had. He recalls her perspective when facing challenges. He notices things that remind him of her. Without realizing it, she has become part of his mental and emotional landscape. The most powerful part of all is that this process usually happens naturally. It is not the result of strategy. It is the result of consistently bringing value, positivity, understanding, and authenticity into someone's life. Those qualities create emotional memories, and emotional memories have a remarkable way of staying with us. Because in the end, the people who stay on our minds are often not the ones who demanded attention. They are the ones who quietly made our lives feel better whenever they were part of it. Perhaps the most surprising truth of all is that the strongest impact a woman can have on a man often happens when she continues fully living her own life. This may sound contradictory at first. After all, if a woman cannot stop thinking about a man, wouldn't the best way to strengthen the connection be to focus even more attention on him? Many people assume that deeper feelings should lead to greater pursuit, more availability, and increased effort to stay constantly connected. Yet in reality, the women who tend to remain on a man's mind the longest are often the ones who care deeply, while still maintaining their own sense of purpose, identity, and direction. The psychology behind this is fascinating. Human beings are naturally attracted to people who have a strong sense of self. There is something compelling about someone who enjoys a relationship but does not lose themselves inside it. A woman who continues pursuing her goals, nurturing her friendships, developing her interests, and creating a meaningful life communicates something powerful without saying a word. She communicates that her happiness comes from within, rather than depending entirely on another person's attention. This kind of independence often creates a healthy emotional dynamic because it removes pressure from the relationship. The connection becomes something valuable and meaningful, but it does not become the sole source of fulfillment. A man feels free to grow closer naturally because he is not carrying the responsibility of being the center of her world. Instead, he becomes an important part of a life that is already rich with purpose and meaning. Many women make the mistake of believing that stronger feelings should automatically lead to greater sacrifice of their own priorities. They begin putting hobbies aside. They neglect friendships. They postpone personal goals. Their attention gradually narrows until much of their emotional energy revolves around one person. While this may seem like devotion, it can sometimes create an unhealthy imbalance. The relationship starts carrying more weight than it was ever meant to carry. A woman who maintains her own life creates a different experience. She still cares deeply. She still invests emotionally. But she remains connected to the things that make her who she is. She continues growing, learning, exploring, and pursuing her passions. This growth often makes her even more attractive because it keeps her interesting, confident, and emotionally balanced. Another reason independence has such a powerful effect is that it creates space. Space is often misunderstood. Many people hear the word and assume it means distance or lack of interest. In reality, healthy space allows appreciation to develop. When two people maintain their individual lives while sharing a meaningful connection, they bring fresh experiences, new perspectives, and renewed energy into the relationship. The connection continues evolving because both people continue evolving. Men frequently admire women who possess this kind of confidence. Not because they are difficult to reach or emotionally unavailable, but because they demonstrate self-respect. A woman who values her own goals and aspirations communicates that she understands her worth. She is not waiting for someone else to create a life for her. She is actively creating one for herself. This confidence often inspires admiration because it reflects emotional maturity and strength. There is also an important emotional benefit for the woman herself. When her life remains full and meaningful, she experiences less anxiety about the relationship. She does not spend every moment analyzing texts, questioning intentions, or worrying about outcomes. Her attention remains distributed across multiple sources of fulfillment rather than concentrated entirely on one person. This emotional balance creates peace, and peace often creates attraction. Ironically, the more complete a woman feels on her own, the more natural her relationships tend to become. She approaches connection from a place of abundance rather than need. She shares her life rather than seeking someone to complete it. This shift changes the entire dynamic because her presence feels confident, authentic, and emotionally healthy. In the end, the women who stay on a man's mind the longest are rarely the ones who make him their entire world. They are the ones who build a beautiful world of their own and then invite him to be part of it.